to the end of the 29th of April 2020. Just finished completing a haircut and hair dye. Taking a quick break. Did it myself. Had to, because, you know, the whole quarantine aspect, right? That's right. So, while I am going to continue on with the aspects of the Book of Mormon, and 1 Nephi, I do have to say that, well, first and foremost, my biological sister, especially Patricia Ann Hom Miller, had a massively huge problem with who I was engaged with twice. She could not accept the fact that I was actually happy. It drove her up the wall. And one of the things that she actually said was, "He's too smooth." That was literally one of her complaints, that Sean was too smooth in his ability to get me to smile, and genuinely smile. And she was quite upset by that. And she, as in my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom, had already denied to her in-laws, the Millers, that I existed. That is how much she has hated me over the years. So it was confusing for her to even give the slightest bit of a concern as to whether or not I was in a relationship, never mind actually being happy. Now, by then, she had already met my ex-in-laws. She had gotten to know Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, her children, and through Susie Marie Nichols Lopez and her children, she wound up getting to know Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen in Georgia. Now, whether or not they spoke on the phone, I don't know that. But Patricia Ann Hom Miller had at one point said she really liked Mary. Mary was nice. And it was one of those, where did you meet her? And my biological sister goes, "Oh, that's not important." No, that kind of is. I mean, I've only met her once. That was at my dead ex-husband's funeral. So I'm just throwing that out there. It's kind of difficult. So, and at this particular point where my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom Miller, had acknowledged she did not like Sean, which we weren't engaged yet, by the way. We were still in the dating aspect. The amount of ridiculous garbage surrounding that relationship, I mean, I can't even. So, I dealt with my biological mother not liking the fact, similarly to my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom Miller, not liking the fact that I actually was happy. Like, neither one of them were happy that I was happy. And then Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, not that I know of her meeting him ever, that I know of. However, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez did meet him. My fault on that one. I apologize. However, the year that Patricia Ann Hom Miller, my biological sister, and my biological parents had met Sean, which was just before the first engagement, I had taken a picture in my house in Carrollton of my biological sister with my 2 children. She had wanted to have a picture with him, and I was like, oh, and I made the joke, oh, this will be the first time that you actually have actual time with my children since you've moved from Illinois to the state of Texas. Realistically, at that point, yeah, because at the, her wedding to Zach, it was essentially only of convenience, although by realistic standards, be honest there. I believe that term is called spilling the tea. And so, Patricia Ann Miller at that point, she was, I positioned her with my 2 children, my son, my daughter. I gave birth to them. Patricia never gave birth to them, obviously. Just saying. I mean, she was technically old enough to have them, but no, she did not actually, get pregnant or deliver them or any of that at all. Anyway, so I had taken the pictures and I had posted them on my original Facebook account, by the way, which another aspect of Patricia denying being related to me at all in regards to the lifestyle. Anyway, so I obviously had no idea about how internet techie stuff went. There's no denying that. Not truthfully. And so, while there were those surrounding issues in regards to my biological family, mainly my biological mother, Anna Louise Lally Hom, and my biological sister, Patricia Ann Hom Miller, my biological father, Mike, his only concern was that he had never seen me date a pretty boy before. That was literally the only concern Mike had about Sean, was he had never seen me date a pretty boy. Again, I mean, I'm sure if I dressed him up, he would look very pretty. However, I didn't see him as a pretty boy. I mean, but, nonetheless, very good looking is what it is. However, then there was also the drama from his ex-girlfriend, Leslie. And I didn't find out about Leslie until after he and I were engaged. And it was literally a week, if that, maybe 2, before he left for basic training, ironically at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And that, I didn't meet her in person. I have no idea what she looks like at all. I could have met her afterwards, but I wouldn't know her as her, of course, because I didn't meet her in person. I have no idea what she looks like. And so I wound up dealing with a bunch of garbage from her because she wanted to say that he had dumped her for me or something like that. And it was one of those, I didn't even know you existed sort of thing, like at all. Didn't even know. Sean wound up explaining that he had already broken up with her, but she wanted to miss something another with the time or something, and I actually gave her some credence to that because I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So I deal with like cognitive and memory issues all the time. Okay, that's issues with time, preaching to the choir. No denying that. However, then the other issues are in regards to Matrice Renee and her, whatever, Jason, Renee's bitch, from the lifestyle. Because Sean and my first date, he had asked me what I was doing that night. It's like, oh, I'm going to a wedding. And he was like, oh, well, who's going with you? No one, just me. Why? He was like, oh, well, I could. Well, I mean, it's not like a normal wedding. And he goes, oh, well, what type of wedding is it? I mean, a wedding is a wedding, right? Yeah. It's kind of lifestyle-y-ish. And he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah. I mean, it's technically at a club. I don't know if you've heard of it before. He goes, try me. Okay. Have you ever heard of the church? And he goes, are you kidding me? No. I never heard of it. I don't know. I mean, he's like, I've been there every now and then. Okay, well, I guess, you know the type of stuff that goes on there. He's like, kind of. Okay, well, that's where the wedding's going to be. Really? Yeah. Heaven and hell is the theme. So, and he was like, so what are you going to dress up as? A fairy. And he said, what? I said, I want to dress up as a fairy. Well, if the theme is heaven and hell, shouldn't you be dressing up as an angel? I'm not dressing up as just any fairy. And he goes, okay, what type of fairy? The queen of the fairies. And so it's kind of like middle plane type of thing. Because if you know anything about fairies, they can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. Kind of like in between. He was like, okay. So he wound up meeting there, and that is what it is. I apparently he didn't expect me to be wearing what I was wearing. Is what it is. And so, in regards to that, Jason, or Renee's bitch on FetLife, now I have sent a letter to the Austin police. That's me. Hi, I wrote it. And that would be in reference to what Jason, Renee's bitch, had acknowledged to me in reference to the city of Austin. And he had said that at one point in time, he had been involved with a real estate guy who apparently was murdered. And that was how he could relate to me. And I was like, I kind of don't think so. Because I'm innocent. I was in a different part of the city, and I hadn't spoken with my dead ex-husband in 2 days. The way you are coming to speak with me about this, I don't think you're innocent. And then later, or no, before then, is when he had wound up telling me about the guy that I saw in a vision around him, which was in some water, like in a bathtub, and like Jason's hands were around the back of his neck, pushing him down in the water. And, later is when Jason had come up to me and he was like, I know how we can relate and be cool. How's that? And that was when he was like, well, you know how you have your issues with your dead ex-husband? I don't have issues with him. He's dead, and he's my ex-husband. That's what makes him my dead ex-husband. I don't have issues with him. Do you have issues with him? And Jason, whatever, Renee's bitch on FetLife, he looks at me and goes, well, you know, I've been accused of a murder too. Okay. I wasn't accused of a murder. I was just questioned about, like, stuff surrounding his life at that time. I mean, I was interrogated, but I was never accused of murder. And Jason, or Renee's bitch on FetLife, goes, well, I mean, you know, we're kind of like the same. No. Nope. Not at all. Nope. Nope. No way, shape, or form. Nope. Like, you're a human being. It's about it. That's what we got in common. That's it. We're both in the lifestyle. As human beings. That's it. That's it. And so, you know, Jason tried to explain that he had known all sorts of stuff. I was like, yeah, but no, we are not the same. We are not one and the same at all whatsoever. Well, Jason is originally from Louisiana. That's what he said. And tummy hurts a little bit. Anyway, so at the Heaven and Hell wedding for Lilith and Hoodie in Dallas at the church, or also apparently known as the Lizard Lounge, one or the other, or both or something, or certain nights, I can't remember. But anyway, at least that was what I was told. Anyway, Maitress Renee was actually at that event. And so while I did not ever know if Sean is actually a congressman's son, I never was told by Sean that. Sean never told me that. Sean told me he worked for the government. That's all I was told. Now, going in reference to Cowboys Dance Hall and the Stoney LaRue concert where I was targeted, obviously, which was after some issues online when it comes to Maitress Renee, as well as in person, except not, because of the way she would be. Those who know how she is understand that. And those who were at the Thanksgiving event in Austin for Club Femme Austin know what I'm just referencing in that regard. And so, though I've done prior videos on that, however, and I wrote about it, one of the things that my now ex-boyfriend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr., had said to me when I had received another email, or, yeah, it was an email that time, received an email, and it was another threatening one, and it said something about, which is part of why, like, I was already looking at Florida in reference to my son, but I was looking at trying to make it, like research and look at stuff the way I had as far as, like, Carrollton's house. And because of the threat that I had received being so vivid in comparison to some of the other ones that I had already been receiving over the years, my now ex-boyfriend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. said, well, you know, you did date someone who's like a congressman's son. I was like, when did I ever do that? I don't remember ever dating a congressman's son. And he was like, yeah, you know, the army, you know, that'll, like, he has control of that, and you know, his daughter's a part of the the law enforcement, and so you could always deal with all that. I was just, what are you talking about? Who did I date that was a congressman's son? And my now ex-boyfriend, Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr., looked at me and goes, you're kidding, right? You know who you dated. Yeah, I know who I dated. And he was like, you dated a congressman's son, you know that. No, I didn't. I was never told I dated a congressman's son. The guys that I dated, not one of them ever said I dated, like, a congressman's son. None of them ever said that their family members were in Congress. Like, I was told that some of their family members were in the government, but that's the state of Texas. Like, come on now. And he pointed out some of the things that were written in the email that I received, and it was one of those, I really don't want to look at that anymore. Like, it's it's not okay. And I didn't know if that's the reality. Because I mean, you know, Kennedy, McCall, those are common last names. I mean, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say that, it's just, they're common last names. I mean, McCall is Irish, but also a few others, and so that's common last name. Kennedy, that's another common, that's a common first name and a common last name. And so, you know, why would I think that? Nobody told me that any of them were in that sort of stuff. And so if there were those who recognized, like, for example, Jason having done certain things in Austin, and then Renee, I think she said something like her teacher or something, or mentor was in Houston, and Jesse Leroy Hoover Jr. said his aunt was in Houston, and that's how he had gotten to be an officer in the Air Force at Lackland Air Force Base. That's where he went to officer training school, which I didn't learn that officer training school for the Air Force doesn't occur at Lackland Air Force Base in 2019. I obviously didn't know, and I haven't ever gotten that confirmation, you know, where somebody came up to me that, like, you know, being Sean McCall or his dad being like, yeah, so, you know, nice to meet you, Congressman, you know, whatever. Like, nobody's told me that, you know, and given me that confirmation. And so, you know, I know that Leslie had sent me an email at my old email address, susan.meeling, and I emailed back and told her that she shouldn't go through with that because there had to be laws to protect, you know, Sean being a soldier. Like, there had to be. Because it's just, you can't make a threat like that. And, you know, then there were issues and stuff like that. And some situations occurred. And I couldn't explain that at the time. And, I know I made a YouTube video with that email address years ago. It was just before that threat, and though I was receiving so many threats by that point, mainly through FetLife and Facebook. I got a few from the email, but mainly they were mainly FetLife. But they would be pop-ups. Like I'd click the subject of the message on FetLife's link, and then up would pop a pop-up thing. And I mean, then at that time there were also a lot of those sorry FetLife is revamping things or whatever. Messages or screens, and I mean, by the time I met Sean, I already had a few threats in certain regards, but after it got really heavy. And so I didn't think that stuff could transfer into real life. And, you know, I mean, similarly to my Medal of Honor art project, where some of the commendations that I found online said, what was one of them? Chasing down a desperate savage Indian, supposedly. And the way I viewed it at that time, when I found that Medal of Honor recipient commendation, was if that was how people in the government worded the commendations at those times, then it shows how far our society has come, because look at how far, you know, the different aspects of public figures are when speaking. I mean, yeah, behind closed doors, that's one thing, but putting it in writing, that's a whole other ball of wax. And I didn't realize I'd ever be that big of a deal in a lot of ways. Despite the different things I dealt with. And so, while my biological mother did do updates on the computer, laptop stuff. She would take my laptop and take it back to the house and do all the work on that. Yet there were times where she would actually drive to Carrollton or drive to Cedar Park or drive to Irving to work on the laptops and do the update stuff. I also didn't know that sort of stuff was an issue. Though I took all the laptops to Geek Squad, and every time I wound up getting a new laptop, she would complain because of various aspects. And so, I didn't, sorry, just remembering that email is a little much. Because it was quite detailed. And so I had no idea, and even when my now ex-boyfriend explained that sort of stuff to me, it was one of those, I don't know who you're talking about, because none of the males that I dated ever said that their parents were in Congress, so why would I think that? So because apparently Congressman McCall lives somewhere in Austin, from what Wikipedia says, if Jason or whatever had some sort of knowledge on that, and or with Matrix Renee, as well as Patrick Kennedy, because of his working with a private security company, and then the whole Bank of America and Deloitte thing, and then Philip Olmsted working with Patrick Kennedy in regards to him being at Chase Bank and all of that. I don't know if that's a law enforcement thing, but just trying to get, I know that's a little bit of rambling there, but maybe that makes sense to somebody in law enforcement. But yeah, as far as I realized, I think it was 2019, I realized that, yes, I did make the YouTube video in reference to having to give up my parental rights because of what occurred to my daughter. And in attempts to do the best I could at that point, and I think it was about almost an hour. And yeah, I figured I'd probably be made fun of by that point. What else is new? Realistically, especially about that. And reached out and asked for help. And I wasn't receiving any responses, and the few responses I received were not helpful. And I'm sure at this point, as it's been out there for however many years, there were plenty of people that I once knew who thought that was funny. Sadly, didn't change what I was going through in reference to my children. And so, I do not know if I did, because again, I wasn't told. I would think that'd be something you'd let someone know. Like, hey, by the way, since introducing you to say that your dad works for the government, that's not, it's not very specific in the state of Texas. Not to be mean or rude, just realistic. However, again, I did not know that, but that was brought up to me, and I did write about that in the first book, Finding a Silver Lining. And I would guesstimate Sean could very much say, no, I never told her that. So that would mean the knowledge of that targeting aspect. Whether that had to do with my biological family, although I would think my biological family would be smarter than that. Then again, Anna is who she is, and Patricia is who she is. So that's kind of, then there's, my ex-in-laws, and Mary being as stupid as she is. My opinion again, but proof is by actions. Just say. And then Susie Marie Nichols, again, kind of stupid. And then Matrix Renee and Jason in that regard. Irony, I don't want to get involved in politics. That's why I got... I mean, I knew I would have to at some point. Once getting up to a certain point of the chain of command, enlisted wives, those who are officers, I'm sure they understand but why I was like, yeah, I'm just not the type of person to get into that officer aspect. Irony, but at this point in time, in this day and age, I guess by technicalities is prudish as a man. Because that's just how I've always been. But yeah, I didn't realize, I don't know whether or not, if by chance he actually was or is a congressman's son. I don't even know if they realized that at that time. I mean, I kind of, maybe that would be why I wasn't told. Maybe because of the haircut and hair color, that was a prophecy thing. Apparently my neighbors in 736 are throwing a temper tantrum. But then again, they do that. So there is that. But yeah, if whether Leslie and or Renee were informed of that in comparison to me and or Jason, the irony, I really don't like drama. And I have been accused of being over dramatic so many times. And the irony. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And, you know, it's not like, and not being rude when I say this, but it is not like law enforcement doesn't know exactly where I am. Not forgetting this is a cell phone thing that I'm recording on, so there's that as well. Probably a GPS thingamabob in the phone, and probably a bunch of numbers with stuff that would be quite specific. Probably, most likely. Anyway, hopefully that clarifies something.